January 17, 1940. Northern France. Dawn. The frost clings to the wing struts like crystallized breath. In the cockpit of a Messerschmitt Bf 109E3, Oberleutnant Hans Joachim Marseille feels the engine's rhythm beneath him. A mechanical heartbeat pulsing through leather gloves, through bone. The air smells of aviation fuel and winter earth. Below, the patchwork fields of occupied France stretch toward Belgium, toward the distant Channel mists where England waits. He does not yet know that within 3 years he will be dead in the North African desert, his aircraft spiraling into sand. He does not yet know that the machine beneath him, this marvel of German engineering, will soon cease to be a secret. But this moment, this frozen January morning, belongs to certainty. The Luftwaffe owns the skies. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 is the apex predator of European airspace, a technological triumph that has swept Polish biplanes from the heavens, that has made French pilots speak in hushed tones of its speed, its climb rate, its killing efficiency. In the ready rooms across the Reich, young men memorize its specifications like prayers. Maximum speed of 354 miles per hour, ceiling of 36,000 feet, armed with 2 7.92mm machine guns and 2 20mm cannons. The Western powers have nothing that can match it, nothing that can touch it. The myth of invincibility is not just propaganda. It is mathematics. It is steel and aluminum shaped by the finest aeronautical minds in Europe. It is the physical manifestation of German technological supremacy, and every pilot who straps himself into its cockpit becomes a priest of that superiority. Marseille does not yet know that today, the myth begins its slow death. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 was born in the mid-1930s, emerging from the Bayerische Flugzeugwerke design bureaus in Augsburg like a blade pulled from a forge. Its creator, Willy Messerschmitt, had envisioned an aircraft that married speed with firepower, that could climb like a rocket and dive like a falcon. The Luftwaffe, rebuilding in secret defiance of Versailles Treaty restrictions, saw in his designs the instrument of future air dominance. By 1935, the first prototypes were flying. By 1937, they were combat testing in the Spanish Civil War, where Condor Legion pilots discovered that the 109 could outmaneuver and outgun anything the Republicans could put in the air. When war came in September 1939, the Bf 109E variant, the Emil, was the cutting edge. It had destroyed the Polish Air Force in days. It had established air superiority over the Western Front with methodical efficiency. Intelligence reports reaching London and Paris painted a grim picture. German fighter technology had leapt ahead by perhaps 2 years, maybe 3. British Hurricanes were solid machines, workhorses, but slower. French Morane-Saulnier fighters were outclassed entirely. The Americans, still neutral, watched from across the Atlantic with professional interest and private concern. Their own fighter programs, the P-40, the P-39, were works in progress, designed to specifications that suddenly seemed inadequate. What the Allies needed was not speculation, not intelligence photographs or pilot debriefings describing the 109's capabilities in subjective terms. What they needed was the machine itself, the blueprints encoded in its metal skin, the tactical manual written in its handling characteristics. They needed someone to deliver it to them. June 4th, 1940. Mechelen, Belgium, the weather turns. Fog rolls across the Low Countries like a gray ocean, visibility dropping to hundreds of yards, then dozens. Major Helmut Wick, already an ace with 14 kills, sits grounded at a forward airfield near the French border, smoking and watching rain sheet across the tarmac. The ground offensive has been spectacular. German armor is racing toward Dunkirk. The British Expeditionary Force is trapped against the sea. But the Luftwaffe cannot fly in this soup, and so the hunters wait. In a nearby hangar, Mechanics work on a Bf-109E3 that has developed engine trouble. Its pilot, Lieutenant Franz von Vera, paces nearby, anxious to return to the hunt. Von Vera is 25 years old, the son of Swiss aristocracy, a man who wears his confidence like a uniform. He has claimed 6 kills in the campaign so far. He expects many more. The mythology of the Bf-109 in these early months is absolute. German fighter pilots speak of it the way artisans speak of perfect tools: responsive, forgiving, lethal. In the hands of a trained pilot, it can sustain turn, fights against British Hurricanes, outclimb anything in the sky, and deliver devastating firepower in a single pass. The cannon ammunition is limited, 60 rounds per gun, but when properly aimed, a 1-second burst can disintegrate an enemy aircraft. More importantly, the 109 represents something larger than its technical specifications. It is the physical proof of German ingenuity, of Aryan engineering superiority, of the National Socialist state's ability to produce weapons that dominate lesser nations. Every time a 109 shoots down a French or British aircraft, it is not just a tactical victory, it is a confirmation of ideology, of the natural order that places Germany at the summit of civilization. This is what German pilots believe as they wait for the weather to clear. This is what they carry with them into the cockpit alongside maps and ammunition. They do not yet understand that belief, no matter how fervent, cannot survive contact with reality. November 22, 1940, Kent, England. The Bf-109E3 comes down in Edam, a farmer's field 12 miles from Canterbury, its engines sputtering, its pilot struggling with a dying aircraft. Oberleutnant Robert Zaby has been shot up over the channel. Hurricane fire has punctured his coolant system, and now the Daimler-Benz engine is cooking itself to death. He has minutes, maybe seconds, before it seizes completely. He makes the decision every fighter pilot dreads: belly landing in enemy territory. The 109 skids across winter grass, shedding velocity in a spray of dirt and torn sod. The propeller blades crumple. The fuselage shudders to a stop. Zaby, wounded and dizzy from blood loss, kicks open the canopy and crawls out. British soldiers are already running toward him across the field. He raises his hands. Within an hour, military intelligence officers arrive. Within a day, the Bf-109E3 is being transported under armed guard to the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough. Within a week, British engineers are crawling over every inch of its structure with calipers and notebooks. What they discover transforms Allied fighter doctrine. The Messerschmitt's reputation for invincibility has been built partly on genuine performance advantages and partly on the inevitable distortions of combat reporting. Pilots under fire rarely make accurate assessments of enemy capabilities. Everything seems faster, more maneuverable, more dangerous when tracer rounds are snapping past your canopy. But now, with the aircraft sitting immobile on a test stand, its secrets exposed under harsh hangar lights, the truth emerges in measurements and numbers. The Bf-109E3 is good. It is not miraculous. Its maximum speed at altitude is impressive, roughly 350 miles per hour at 16,000 feet. But it achieves this through a narrow, fuel-efficient design that compromises other characteristics. The wings are short and thin, optimized for speed and high-altitude performance. This gives the 109 its excellent climb rate and allows it to engage at altitudes where thicker-winged British fighters begin to gasp. But short wings mean high wing loading, which means the 109 bleeds energy quickly in sustained turns. A Hurricane, with its broader wing area, can outturn the 109 in a close-quarters dogfight. A pilot who knows this can use it. The fuel system is gravity-fed, efficient but vulnerable. In a negative G maneuver, a pushover dive, the engine cuts out momentarily as fuel loses contact with the pump. British pilots don't experience this problem with their carbureted Merlin engines. If a Bf-109 dives away from a pursuing hurricane, the British pilot can push into a negative G follow, gaining distance while the German engine coughs. It's a small thing, a quirk of engineering, but in combat, small things become life and death. The canopy design is cramped. Visibility to the rear is poor. The narrow-track landing gear, tucked into the fuselage rather than the wings, makes ground handling treacherous. Luftwaffe pilots are dying in landing accidents at rates that would shock their British counterparts. The myth of German engineering perfection meets the reality of compromise and design trade-offs. British test pilots fly the captured 109 against Hurricanes and Spitfires in mock combat. They discover that the Messerschmitt can be beaten consistently if the British pilot understands the engagement envelope, where to press the attack, where to break away, how to exploit the 109's weaknesses while avoiding its strengths. This knowledge, reduced to tactical bulletins, begins flowing to RAF squadrons throughout late 1940 and into 1941. The psychological impact is as significant as the tactical revelations. The Bf-109 is no longer an unknown terror. It is a machine with specific limitations, flown by men who can make mistakes. The mythology of invincibility cracks not all at once, but in increments, each new piece of intelligence a hammer blow against the edifice of fear. But the captured Bf-109 in England is not the end of the story. It is merely the prelude. March 7, 1941. Northern France. Another 109 lands in Allied hands, this time through defection. The pilot, disillusioned with the Reich, puts down at a free French airfield and requests asylum. The aircraft is newer, a Friedrich variant, the Bf-109 F1, with improved aerodynamics and a refined cowling. It is shipped to Britain, then across the Atlantic to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. The Americans are late to the air war, but they are watching, they are learning, and they are building. At Wright Field, Army Air Corps engineers disassembled the Bf-109 F1 with surgical precision. Every component is measured, photographed, analyzed. The Daimler-Benz DB601 engine, an inverted V12 producing 1,175 horsepower, is torn down to its bearings and examined for metallurgical composition, machining tolerances, fuel requirements. The supercharger assembly is studied for its boost characteristics. The propeller constant speed unit is reverse engineered. American aircraft designers have been working in parallel, developing fighters that they hope will be competitive. The P-38 Lightning, the P-47 Thunderbolt, the P-51 Mustang. But hope is not certainty. The captured Bf-109 provides a benchmark, a measuring stick against which American designs can be compared. It also provides confirmation of design philosophies that are beginning to diverge from European norms. The Germans have optimized the Bf-109 for the European theater. High-altitude interception, short-range missions, fights that end quickly one way or another. The aircraft carries roughly 88 gallons of internal fuel, enough for perhaps 90 minutes of flight time. It is designed for a war where airfields are close to the front lines, where combat happens over friendly or contested territory, where damaged aircraft can limp home to land on German soil. The Americans, reading the intelligence reports and studying the captured machine, understand that their coming war will be different. The Pacific is an ocean. Europe, when they finally invade, will require deep penetration raids into hostile airspace. American fighters will need range. They will need endurance. They will need the ability to escort bombers hundreds of miles beyond the front lines and still have fuel to fight and return. The P-51 Mustang program, already underway, receives crucial validation from the Bf-109 analysis. The Mustang's laminar flow wing, smoother, more efficient, will give it lower drag and longer range. Its internal fuel capacity, 184 gallons, expandable with drop tanks, will allow it to reach Berlin and back from English bases. The captured Messerschmitt confirms that the American design philosophy is not just different, but potentially superior for the strategic air war that is coming. In workshops and design bureaus from California to Connecticut, engineers absorb the lessons of the Bf-109, where German designers succeeded, where they compromised, where their assumptions about the nature of air combat limited their choices. The Americans take those lessons and build something new. July 1942. Eastern Front. The war has metastasized. What began as a European conflict has become global, consuming continents. On the vast steppes of Russia, Bf-109 fighters duel with Soviet Yak-1s and Lej-3s in skies so enormous that a pilot can fly for an hour and see nothing but earth and clouds. In North Africa, Hans-Joachim Marseille, the pilot who flew that frozen January dawn in 1940, has become the Luftwaffe's most lethal ace, claiming 158 kills before his aircraft's engine fails catastrophically, and he dies attempting to bail out. The Bf-109 is still deadly in skilled hands. German aces are still racking up impossible kill counts. Erich Hartmann will eventually claim 352 victories, most of them on the Eastern Front, most of them while flying various marks of the Messerschmitt. But the myth of the aircraft's invincibility has evaporated. Allied pilots know its weaknesses now. They know how to fight it. More importantly, the industrial reality of the war is shifting beneath the Luftwaffe's feet. Germany can produce Bf-109s quickly. The design is modular, suited to dispersed manufacturing, able to be built in factories that British bombers haven't yet destroyed. Between 1939 and 1945, German factories will turn out more than 33,000 solid Bf-109s of all variants, making it the most produced fighter aircraft in history. But quantity is beginning to lose its meaning when the enemy has both quantity and quality. American factories are coming online. The industrial capacity that built automobiles and tractors is retooling for war production, and the scale is staggering. In 1942, the United States produces 47,136 aircraft of all types. In 1943, that number rises to 85,000. By 1944, it will reach 96,318. The P-51 Mustang, incorporating the lessons learned from captured Bf-109s, begins escorting bomber formations deep into Germany. German pilots, scrambling to intercept, discover that the American fighter can outturn them, outrun them, out-endure them. The hunters have become the hunted. The Bf-109 pilots expected to dominate the skies through superior technology and superior will. They expected their enemies to fold, to break, to recognize the futility of resistance against German air power. What they encountered instead was adaptation, was learning, was an enemy who studied the Messerschmitt's secrets and built something better. The psychological transformation is profound. In 1940, Luftwaffe pilots flew with the confidence of invincibility. By 1943, they fly with the grim determination of men who know they are losing. The aircraft beneath them has not changed. If anything, the later 109 variants are improvements over the original. But the context has shifted. The Bf-109 is no longer the apex predator. It is prey. The symbol of this transformation is not the aircraft itself, but what it represented. In German military thinking, the fighter pilot was the modern knight, the lone warrior whose skill and courage determined victory. The Bf-109 was his sword, forged by a superior culture, wielded by a superior race. Every kill confirmed this mythology. Every victory reinforced the ideological framework of National Socialism. But ideology cannot survive measurements. It cannot withstand engineers with calipers and test pilots with stopwatches. The captured Bf-109s revealed that German engineering, while excellent, was not magical. German pilots, while brave, were not superhuman. The Third Reich had built a very good fighter aircraft, but it had also built a prison of its own propaganda, a belief system that insisted German technology must be supreme because German ideology demanded it. The Americans approached the problem differently. They captured the enemy's best weapon, studied it without preconception, and asked, "What can we learn? Where did they succeed? Where did they fail? How can we do better?" This empirical mindset, this willingness to learn from the enemy, was itself a weapon, perhaps more powerful than any airframe or engine. When the first P-51 Mustangs arrived over Germany in late 1943, carrying enough fuel to escort bombers to any target in the Reich, the Luftwaffe's fighter pilots understood that the war was lost. Not lost in a strategic sense. The generals and politicians would continue fighting for another year and a half, but lost in the realm of possibility. The skies belonged to America now. The Bf-109 continued flying until the last days of the war. On May 8, 1945, when Germany surrendered, there were still hundreds of them scattered across cratered airfields, out of fuel, flown by boys who had been given a few dozen hours of training and told to stop the impossible tide. They climbed into cockpits of aircraft that had once symbolized supremacy and found themselves flying relics, technologically outmatched, numerically overwhelmed. In the deserts of New Mexico, at Alamogordo in July 1945, American scientists detonate the first atomic bomb. The aircraft that will carry similar weapons to Japan, the B-29 Superfortress, is itself a testament to American industrial and technological capacity, a bomber so advanced that no fighter in the Axis arsenal can reliably intercept it at its operational altitude. The war in Europe has been over for 2 months. The war in the Pacific will end in weeks. The captured Bf-109s that made this possible, that taught Allied engineers what to build, that showed Allied pilots how to fight, sit in museums now, preserved behind velvet ropes. Visitors walk past them, glance at the placards, read the specifications. Maximum speed, 354 miles per hour. Range, 410 miles. Armament, 2 7.92-20 20 p.m. machine guns, 2 20 b cannons. The numbers do not convey the truth. The truth is, in the negative space, in what the aircraft revealed about the limits of ideology when confronted with empirical reality. The truth is in the transformation of fear into understanding, of mystery into data, of myth into history. The German pilots who flew the Bf-109 in those early days expected to dominate through technological and ideological superiority. They believed their aircraft was invincible because they believed Germany was invincible, because the entire architecture of their worldview demanded it. What they did not expect was that their enemy would be curious, would be methodical, would take apart the symbols of German supremacy with wrenches and micrometers and learn every secret encoded in the metal. The captured Bf-109s taught the Allies something essential: that no weapon, no matter how advanced, guarantees victory. That engineering is a conversation between problems and solutions, not a pronouncement of cultural superiority. That the side which learns faster, which adapts more readily, which questions its assumptions and builds upon enemy innovations, that side holds the advantage. 76. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. The Bf-109 F-1 that arrived from France in 1941 sits in the United States Air Force Museum, restored to pristine condition. Its paint is factory fresh, its markings crisp. Visitors photograph it next to the P-51 Mustang displayed beside it. The student and the teacher, frozen in time. An elderly man stops before the Messerschmitt. He is 71 years old, a retired engineer who worked at Wright Field during the war. He remembers the frantic months of 1941 and 1942 when every piece of information about German technology was analyzed, debated, incorporated into American designs. He remembers the captured Bf-109 arriving in pieces, crated and mysterious. He remembers the moment when they fired up its engine for the first time on American soil, the distinctive sound of the Daimler-Benz 512 echoing across the Dayton airfield. He does not speak these memories aloud. They are private, personal, fragments of a war that transformed the world. But he stands before the aircraft for a long time, looking at the narrow wings, the cramped cockpit, the gun ports in the nose. This machine, he thinks, taught us how to win. Not through imitation. The American fighters that emerged from the war years looked nothing like the Bf-109, incorporated different philosophies, solved different problems. But through understanding, through the patient work of taking apart the enemy's best weapon and asking, why this choice? What does this reveal about their assumptions? Where are they right? Where are they wrong? The Messerschmitt Bf-109 was a German fighter that accidentally became an Allied teacher. It was the sword that, when captured, revealed the weaknesses in the armor of ideology. It was the symbol of supremacy that, when examined closely, showed that supremacy was a lie, that engineering is hard work and careful choices, not the expression of racial destiny. The elderly engineer turns away from the display and walks toward the exit. The museum will close soon. Outside, the Ohio summer is fading into evening, and the air smells of cut grass and distant rain. He thinks about the young men who flew these machines, German and American, British and French, all of them brave, all of them mortal. He thinks about how the war was won not just through courage, but through curiosity, not just through sacrifice, but through the willingness to learn from the enemy's excellence. The Bf-109 sits in the museum, silent and still, its secrets long since given up. But its lesson endures, encoded not in the metal of its airframe, but in the invisible architecture of knowledge that Allied engineers built from its captured form. In war, the side that learns faster wins. The side that questions its assumptions survives. The side that treats the enemy's technology as a teacher rather than a mystery gains the advantage that cannot be overcome. This is the truth that the German pilots of January 1940 could not have imagined. That their greatest weapon would become their enemy's greatest tool. That the machine they trusted to deliver victory would instead deliver the knowledge necessary to defeat them. They flew with confidence born of ideology, with certainty that their superiority was preordained. They did not understand that certainty is the enemy of learning, that ideology is the enemy of adaptation. The Americans understood. They captured the Messerschmitt, tore it apart, learned its lessons, and built something better. This was the secret weapon that won the war. Not any single aircraft or bomb, but the mindset that allowed innovation, that encouraged questioning, that treated every enemy advancement as an opportunity to learn rather than a threat to dogma. The Bf-109 pilots expected to dominate the skies. They expected their enemies to break beneath superior technology and will. What they did not expect was to become teachers, to hand their secrets over in bent metal and shattered canopies. What they did not expect was that the war would be won not by the most advanced weapon of 1939, but by the willingness to study that weapon and surpass it. In the end, the Messerschmitt Bf-109 did change the war, just not in the way its creators intended. It taught the Allies what they needed to know. It revealed the limits of ideology when confronted with empirical truth. It showed that no machine, no matter how advanced, can compensate for a closed mind, for a refusal to learn, for the prison of certainty. The fighter sits in the museum, a relic of a lost war and a vanished world. But its lesson flies on, carried not in aluminum and steel but in the invisible currents of human knowledge. The understanding that learning is stronger than certainty, that adaptation is stronger than ideology, that the mind willing to study its enemy's excellence will ultimately prevail. This is what the captured Messerschmitt taught. This is the secret that changed the war. Not a secret of engineering, but a secret of thought. The recognition that every enemy weapon carries within it the seeds of its own defeat. If only you are willing to look closely enough, to measure precisely enough, to learn humbly enough. The German pilots flew into history believing their machine was invincible. The Americans proved them wrong, not with slogans or propaganda, but with calipers and test flights, and the patient work of understanding. In that quiet, methodical process, the disassembly of myth into measurement, the war was won before the final battles were ever fought. The evening deepens over Ohio. The museum doors close. The Bf-109 sits in darkness, surrounded by the other machines of war. All of them silent now. But the lesson encoded in its aluminum skin remains, waiting for anyone willing to read it. That knowledge defeats certainty, that learning defeats ideology, that the side willing to question and adapt will always, eventually, overcome the side that believes its superiority is eternal. This is the truth the German fighter accidentally gave to America. This is how a single captured aircraft changed the war. Not through what it was, but through what it taught. Not through its strength, but through the revelation of its limits. Not through victory, but through the gift of understanding to its enemies. In the end, that gift was enough.